This is Hashtag Gen Z, a podcast that explores Generation Z, who they are and how they're different from other generations, while also being an incredible blend of those who came before them. We explore what they think is cool, what moves them, and why they do what they do. I'm your host, Meghan Grace, and it is so nice to have you here. Welcome back. We are kicking off season 7, and it is wild to think that we've been in this for 7 years. When I started this show in 2018, I wasn't really sure what would come of it. Whether you've been with me since the early days or you've joined along the way, I'm so happy you're here. I know there are many listeners from other generations who are here to learn about Gen Z, and there are plenty of Gen Z ears who tune in as well. I am a big fan of how this listening crowd is a multi-generational party. That's why I do this, so we can have a greater understanding and collaboration across generations. If you've been following on social media, you might have seen some exciting news in the last few months. I have a new book out, and we couldn't be more excited to have released Generations in the World of Work earlier this year. It's been awesome to share the new findings with the world.
What if I told you that your boss skydives, Tim in marketing is a magician, and Sam in accounting does sums in his head while standing on his hands? Seeing sides of the people you work with but never see, sides that inform and inspire their work and that can inspire yours, is what The Talent Show is all about. Email me, Tom Alexander, host of The Talent Show, at talentshow@backboneinc.com and show us what you got. I look forward to seeing you on The Talent Show.
This book was based on a study that Dr. Seemiller and I conducted through our nonprofit, the Institute for Generational Research and Education, about the 4 modern generations in the workplace. We engaged members of each generation and dove deep into perspectives, behaviors, and viewpoints on navigating the workplace. In this episode, I brought Corey back, joined by my co-author, so we can discuss our new book and share some behind-the-scenes insights on our writing process. So help me in welcoming Corey Seemiller back to the conversation. It's always exciting to welcome back a guest that we kick off every season with, really. And as we were kind of joking before we started recording that if she doesn't come back next season, it's not really a season. So we know her, we love her. We wouldn't be able to even have some of these conversations without my collaboration with her. So Corey, welcome back. How have you been?
Oh, good. Good to be back. Always good to be on your podcast, Meghan, and always good to be able to talk about one of my favorite subjects of all. So glad to be here.
Yeah, it is. It's always a good time. And sometimes I do feel silly when we do these podcasts because it's kind of just like 2 old friends and research partners hanging out. But
it's pretty much like our Zoom meetings. I mean, really, we just record our Zoom meetings, but
we sell them for lots of money. But Corey, I mean, really the big update on our end is we have a new book out. Came out earlier in 2025. So as I know you and we got it to the finish line, but I got to say congratulations.
Yes,
to you
too. Yeah. Woo, what a heavy lift.
Yeah. And I don't know if this happens to you, but I feel like everyone's natural inclination when someone releases a book is to be like, so when are you writing the next one? I don't know. That probably happens to you a little bit more than me because you're more deeply in the academic space. But I'm kind of like, they're like, what are you doing next? I'm like, I'm taking a nap.
Exactly.
I'm taking a break. I'm promoting the book. Like, let me like live a little. No, yes. It's an exciting time, but I want to let this one like live in the sun a little bit.
Well, yeah. And I mean, I think the fact that this was sort of doubled down with Gen Z Around the World, which we released only 10 months earlier. And it was just a lot of writing, a lot of publishing. And we haven't really had time to sort of sit and relish in the release of those because we usually write a book and then we'll release it before we start writing the next book. And we actually wrote Gen Z Around the World. We didn't have a lot of time to do a lot of like celebratory stuff around it because we were knee deep in this newest book. And so now we have both books out. I feel like we need to celebrate. We need to hold one in each hand and just say, hello, everyone, read this.
Yes. And they're beautiful books, like both physically and content wise, they're great books. But I do agree, like sometimes I'm like, oh, dang, we did do Generation Z Around the World. Like that did happen. It was like a blur in my life. And it's I love suggesting it to people, especially our international like collaborators and friends that reach out and they're like, tell me about Gen Z and fill in the blank country. And I was like, we have a whole book that might be able to help with that. And I love being able to share about that. But I do think that, especially we were just like, here it is. We got to go back into our cave now and finish this next one. And really, I mean, we're here. Sorry, Gen Z around the world. We're here to talk about generations in the world of work and share a little bit about that. But I do agree. I don't suggest writing 2 books at once, but
yes,
we did it. We're here. For those inquiring, we're not writing anything else. We have not even formally talked about what's next. We're happy to see this one in the world.
Exactly.
Well, Corey, let's chat a little bit. Let's talk about why we wrote the book. I think why we wrote the book and why now is really an important driving factor. We always talk about how motivation is such an important part of understanding generations. I think it's helpful for us to think about our own motivation. So for you, why did we write this book and why now? And I can jump in after.
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple things. One is much more logistical and tactical. We had kind of a serendipitous moment with a publisher who wanted us to write this book initially, and it was sort of out of the scope of what we were planning on doing because we were, as I said, kind of knee deep in Gen Z around the world, and so we had an opportunity with a publisher. So that is probably the main driving force around why now. I think why the book, we had been wanting to write a book like this for a while. We had talked about doing one specific on Gen Z coming into the workplace. And then kind of as we got a little further in our studies and realizing, kind of the complexities, that it just was hard to write just a book about one generation in the workplace without really considering that there are other people there too. And so, it's been fun because you and I have really kind of grown up with this generation. They came to college. We came to college with them, and we went to grad school with some of them, and now we're in the workforce. And it seemed like a natural transition to say, here's what we need to be looking at as this generation enters into the workforce. So why now? It was really publisher driven. And I'm really, while we took a long and winding road to get where we were, I think it was, the timing is perfect. For the release of this. And then why the book? It's needed. We have got to better understand our workplaces. And so I'm just really elated that we can pull the other generations in to understand that better.
I echo that a lot. I think as I've reflected on it a little bit too, it is the natural progression of Gen Z, right? Like went to school, went to college, went to grad school, went to whatever they were doing after the high school setting if they weren't going into higher education. And now they're really squarely like 50% or more are in the workforce. And this is the first time, and this is something I think it was the unintended recognition as we were writing this book. This is the first time Gen Z is in environments that are not designed solely to engage them and their peers, right? So like in college and in high school and youth development and you name it, up to the workplace, every other environment is kind of designed by older generations to engage a younger generation. And this is the next time where like certainly employers and companies are wanting to engage Gen Z from we want to hire you and keep you, but they're not the only kids on the block. Right. Like there's other people that they've got to interact with. And I think that was the natural progression of where we knew we needed to go, regardless of if we included the other generations. And I think the why for me was a few years ago, we started to do our work under the umbrella of the Institute. And with the Institute, our mission is about fostering collaboration across generations. And so I think we kind of knew we needed to take that step into more formally providing resources and education around collaboration from different cohorts and not just a Gen Z factory. Because sometimes it does feel like we put out a lot of work about Gen Z. I mean, they were our first baby, if you will. And we had to go back and say, but there's other people we need to also include in this conversation. That was my why. It was like, one, it was like, you told me we were going to like have this opportunity. I was like, cool, I'll do whatever. I'll follow you into battle. And then as we were doing it a lot more, I felt like I got like this, this was really like the universe nudging us, in my opinion, of like, it needed to happen. What do you think about this book? This sounds like very vain. It sounds like two people talking about how great their kid is in my opinion. What makes this book unique? Like why are we special is the better question here.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I really like about the work that you and I have done is that we have kind of like a blend of expertise. We bring in one perspective. So we have, our original studies, which we've done several at this point, in very robust, complex studies. And this study that we based this on was the first time that we ever used a panel where we actually had a specific outreach of people in generations using a third party who could help us do that. And so we have our own expertise. And so we can ask the kind of questions that we want to know, which was things that weren't being asked before, which is why we wanted to make sure we did so. But the other thing that's really neat about kind of the approach that we've taken this with all of our books, but this one also, is that we don't just write a book about our research. We write a book about concepts and topics and issues in the workplace, and we use our research to frame it, but we do use dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of other studies to corroborate what we're saying, to fill in the gaps, to tell the whole story. And so I like that we can be, we're not just writing about other people's research, but we're not just writing about our own research. We try to tell this kind of more holistic story about things that matter. And that is an approach we've done, like I said, with all of our books. I've been very pleased about that because I think it provides a lot more resources to people than just our own data. So that, as I think, makes the book unique. In addition to the fact that you and I both have, some very technical expertise in studying and researching this generation, but have more of a colloquial or everyday tone to be able to communicate it through real examples and vignettes and things that make sense for the, kind of the everyday reader like me. I'd rather read my book than read some very heavily, kind of academically influenced textbook. I mean, I'm an academic and I say that, because sometimes you just want to read something that just is, kind of flows and is an easy read. So those are the things that I really like about our style of writing, but also, this book.
Yeah, I really do appreciate, for lack of better words, like we do our homework pretty aggressively. Mm-hmm. And that just comes from two people that were probably very good students growing up, that there's, and I've gotten this feedback from other people, and my good friend Pietro Sasso, who we've done some work with, and in his edited text, he lauds us. And so I'm really just echoing what Pietro says, is like, I go to read your book because I know that it's going to be the information's there, but it's not just fluff that you pulled out of the air, and that there's probably 20 resources at the end of the chapter, at the end of the book, that I'm going to be able to draw from. So in some cases, I feel like we put together like a really, really amazing bibliography for people. However, what I think is unique a little bit about this book is, and we do this in every book because we're the kinds of people that do research for utility, right? And what is going to be functional for people and useful for people. And every one of our books, like even Gen Z Goes to College, had elements of like, what can campus professionals and higher education professionals do to engage this generation? I think generations in the world of work is just like, it is overflowing with strategies. And it's not, what I like is that it's designed for not one intentional reader audience, and publishers are probably like, who's your target audience? And I say it's people that want to be better about working with other generations, regardless of what lens they bring to it, whether they are the high-level leader that is maybe leading a company or a really big division, a manager that's leading a team of 5, or an individual contributor that just wants to be a better colleague. And I really do like that we've got something for those kind of 3 distinct groups without putting one of them in a corner as like lesser than, because I think we've all lived it, where it's even the individual interactions with your colleagues that can impact your work, but it can also go all the way up to people that are in charge of like policy and process and practice in an organization. So I just really like that. Even if you're not a research reader, if you're like, I just need some guidance on what to do, there's a lot of that in there. And I love that, because I hate to give people a bunch of research and be like, good luck out there.
Right.
Make sense of it on your own. Figure out what you're going to do. And while we're not super prescriptive, I do think it is nice that we're kind of like, you could consider this.
Right. Here's a heads up. You might want to know why this is, could be happening. So I agree with you. I like that. I like the utility of it and the practical use of it. And even at the end of the book, we divide the book out by topic areas, but at the end of the book, we divide it out by generations. And so we do talk about kind of at the end where you can say, here's some best practices for working with this particular generation. And we sort of summate a lot of the items in the book. So if you are more of a topical reader, you've got that. Or if you're more of just like, oh, I've got this employee that's a millennial and I want to work better with them, then you can read about that towards the end. So I like that too, in terms of structure and being able to give strategies that are useful.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad that we had an opportunity to brag on ourselves. I don't think people do that enough. Well, the right people don't do that enough. There's plenty of people that do that. And I'm like, brag less.
We really don't brag a lot, actually. It's almost like kind of an awkward conversation because we don't.
We're bragging to each other and then anyone listening.
I know, exactly.
However, I think the people listening are a lot of our big cheerleaders. So I don't think that they're going to mind. So Corey, let's nerd a little bit. That's really where you and I live, our happiest. Let's talk about findings. Some of our favorite findings, whether they're quirky or, wow, this changed my perspective on things. What are some of your favorite findings from the book that I don't know, either you can't stop talking about it or it's just fun and you want to share it?
Okay, so I'll nerd out with this is really informative and helps me with the way I see the world in my work, and then I'll give you a quirky, cool finding that I just can't get out of my head. So the findings, I teach leadership. That's my field, and so of course, working on the chapter for leadership was really, really interesting to me. But I really like this kind of we have a table in the book that's kind of a summary of really what each of the 4 generations thinks about being inspired by a leader, and so. We have baby boomers are inspired by the actual leader, and they like it when the leader says things like, I've got this. Gen Xers are inspired by ideas, and they want their leader to say, here's my vision, so they can, get behind it and run with it. Millennials are inspired by the process. They like it when the leader says, let's do this together, given that a lot of them really enjoy collaboration. And then Gen Zers are inspired by the potential for impact. And they like it when the leader says, you can make a difference and I'll help you and we can all make a difference and what we're doing matters. And to me, that was so interesting because it really is just telling as to how we go about inspiring people tends to be the way that we like to be inspired ourselves. So as a Gen Xer, I might, really be talking about my big vision and I want to delegate to you so you can run off and do your independent work, but that might not really work well at all with a millennial who really wants to feel like we're in this together and it's a process-oriented experience. And so I really, really enjoyed exploring more of that and understanding how that, not just the inspiration, but how it impacts the actual, the execution of the work in terms of leadership was really fascinating to me. Now here's my quirky finding. Did you know that millennials have the most organized closets? That is one of my favorite findings. That was not from our study. It was Closet Made had done a study on different generations and how they organize. And I thought that was really interesting. I loved it. Why does it matter that millennials have the most organized closets? Because they tend to also have some of the most organized workspaces. And so we talk a lot in the book about how people get things done. There's a whole chapter on getting things done, all about how people structure their time, their space, their workload. And I just love this idea that, millennials are really organized. And what does that mean for their expectation of what a workspace feels like and looks like? And that to me it's just kind of fun as we look at how we can use other data to translate into understanding how we all show up at work.
As the resident millennial here, you know this, I do have a very organized closet. You've also traveled with me, so I hang everything up out of my bag into the closet. Not everyone does that, but I like to see it all. And if you're listening and you're interested, I will give you my closet organization system. But it does matter because I know exactly okay, I have this today. I'm going to run straight to my closet. I work from home, so the commute's not far. It's 10 steps from closet to office. But the ability to be like, oh, I know where this thing is. And it absolutely does matter because I feel like it does translate to work of oh, I know where that thing is, whether it's the document or the folder I need or the resource I need. It's organized and it knows where it is. And maybe that's not every millennial, but I would say that we as a generation love to home edit our lives. And then there's been stuff coming up about how millennials grew up with baby boomers who tend to hoard things and hold on to things. Yeah. And millennials are all about like minimalism, get rid of the things. I don't want the things. I have a whole other theory about that, about why that is. But I can attest as a millennial with a very organized closet.
Well, great.
So one of my favorite findings, or something that I talked about this at our launch, and I've talked about it in a few other spaces, of that I wasn't expecting to be so interested in, but I was really interested in learning about, and actually loved writing this chapter, was our findings on retirement. And I think it's just so interesting because as a cohort, the mindset that someone brings into retirement can feel really far away. Like for Gen Zers, it can feel decades away, but for baby boomers, they're like, this could be any moment. And the mindset that they're bringing into it, I think just gives you so much insight on the long-term motivation and the long-term investment in a career, if that makes sense. And what we know is baby boomers were kind of like guinea pigs to some of our more modern social security setup. And so like their retirement plans are different and their timelines are different, but they're also living longer than previous generations. And so that's impacting the workplace. Gen Xers are coming at retirement from a very different lens of like, they were supposed to be in their peak earning years during the 2008 recession. And then we have the pandemic coming, a little bit after that. And so that's impacting their retirement plans. And it's coalescing at the same time that they're potentially parenting their parents and parenting children. And there's a lot going on for Gen Xers trying to be like, when will I stop working? And then we've got our younger generations that are like, I would like to stop working tomorrow, and trying to do everything they can. So I just think that the mindset, as people think about retirement, actually gives us a larger reflection of the view on work in general. And so I loved that chapter. It was not like when I started writing, I'm like, what do I have to contribute to this conversation around retirement? Turns out quite a bit. And there's a lot of really interesting additional resources outside of the work that we did on retirement and retirement mindsets. So I loved that finding from a more academic perspective. My quirky one is that what I keep saying is Gen X is the quiet popular girl. Because like that's how I keep framing it, is that everyone likes Gen X. Like glowing reviews from the 3 other cohorts in our studies on collaboration, on motivation. Everyone seems to like to work with Gen X, but they're a smaller group and like they're less studied. And so that's why I call them the cool, quiet girl, because like everyone likes Gen X, is what it feels like. Maybe not every single day and every single Gen Xer. But I do love that they are really seen as a favorable cohort by other cohorts to work with. And I mean, I work with you, Corey, and you're Gen X, and we got a good thing going. Exactly. So that's like my fun, quirky one, but they do need to be brought into more conversations. I know we talked about the New York Times puzzle I think it was a few months ago now. Yeah. And I do those at night, but there was like one where it's kind of like word search, and you have to find, like, the theme was generations, and they didn't even include Gen X. And I was like about to write the New York Times and be like, excuse me, I have to report a crime, because I felt like I needed to go to bat for our Gen Xers who were left out of the New York Times puzzle. But
yes. Well, and they're left out all the time. You remember that all the time. Remember the news station that had the whole list of the generations and all this stuff, and you're looking at it and you're like, wait a minute, where's Gen X? I mean, literally left out of the conversation.
It doesn't. I mean, the cool, quiet girl. Like, come on. We all like her. And we need to bring her back into the conversation because there's a lot of good stuff going on there. So I am a Gen X fangirl. Not that I dislike my own generation, but I just love all generations. I love learning about the other ones. It's kind of why this is my job.
It's fun. Well, you know what's really fun? Actually, as a Gen Xer, learning about my own generation was really cool because, like you said, they're the least reported on. So I didn't even, other than my own personal experience, being able to learn about my generation was actually really, really cool. So that was a lot of fun. And we do give equal airtime to all generations in our book. And so that was, that's really cool to see how they all come out and play together.
Yeah. And I think that we had both, like, we kind of balanced each other out, making sure that no one got more time in the sun than the others. But then it also encouraged us to be like, oh, wait, we do need to make sure that we're putting in adequate findings for all 4 generations, and not just defaulting to ones that might have popped up a little bit more, or that do pop up more in other research that's done. I mean, it's not a secret that millennials and Gen Z are 2 of the most studied generations, but that just also takes place in the fact that we were able to, as a society, scale social science around the time when they were growing up. So like the ability to study generations just boomed around those two. So yeah, it's a good book. I like it. I'm working through it again as we're like kind of, I don't know if this happens to you, but like I submit a book and I'm like, great, I'll see it when it comes out. And then I have to pick it back up and spend time with it and start to pull my findings into things and weave it into conversations. And so it's fun to revisit it now that it's out.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I would agree. And in book format, like I'm so used to reading it in like a Word document with track changes that it's kind of cool to see it like bound with a cover and like people would read it, you know, and it's like, oh, this is actually really interesting. It almost just feels more interesting just because of the way it's presented.
Yeah, it's not that you get like the PTSD of looking at the Word docs, but you kind of do. Like after you've read it so many times online, it's just not the same. It's just not the same, but it's fun to see it in this format. And one day I'll go back and I'll need those docs to some degree, but not right now. We're good in the analog.
We're taking a break. Yes.
Well, Corey, anything else you want to share about the book? I mean, it's really wild to think about like how long we've been thinking about this, planning for it, collecting the data, writing it, going through the whole thing. It's been almost a 2-year process. And so I don't want to boil down a 2-year journey into 25-ish minutes, but anything else from your mind that we should talk about and share with the listeners?
Well, I would just say that, you know, one of the cool things about generations is, and while we aren't necessarily looking to write another book or anything, is to just keep tabs on how the world is continuing to change around us and how generations are adapting. And I think what's really neat about books that feel like they're time bound because we took the data collection in a certain moment of time. The fact is they're relatively timeless. And so when you understand a generation and their general values and perceptions, it's easy to anticipate and understand how they're going to react to future events that occur around them. And so, you know, some people have said to you and I, wow, you could see this coming. Yeah, we could see it coming. There were things about the 2024 election that you and I were talking about all the way back in 2019. Even before the 2020 election, there were things that we could even see coming around distance learning and remote work that were happening years before we've even written this book. Because once you kind of get an essence of a generation and some of those pure personality characteristics that are relatively immutable in some ways, you can anticipate how people are going to react. So even if you pick up this book, or any of our books, years later, they're still incredibly relevant because it tells you about the insight, what's going on in the minds of people so that you can say, oh, I have this very unique situation. Here's likely how they might react. I can anticipate it. And that's what I love about generational research is a lot of times people think it's just like a snapshot in time and, oh, wow, it's already been a month. It's already dated. No, it isn't. It's, you know, the way that we write is more of a sociology perspective is like, here's what you need to know to understand this generation. If you only need one book for the rest of your life in 20 years, you should be able to pick this book up and say, okay, I understand today because I understand what was going on yesterday with this generation. And so I think that that's really critical and key to the work that we do that makes it different than just like a flash poll, right? Where you get things, you jump on, you see a news article online or whatever. We really kind of create the foundation for having a good understanding of generations, regardless of what unfolds, even if we don't talk about each of those things in any of our subsequent books.
Yes. And you pretty much described the importance of chapter 1 right there of like understanding generations and the theory. And like, I love talking about generational theory with people. And I start almost every one of my sessions with like, like 5 minutes of generational theory, because it helps so much to say like, oh, I'm upset because these 22-year-old brand new interns are acting like 22-year-olds, not because it's a generational thing. Right. And I love to be able to take it down to understanding like what's actually happening as opposed to like my reaction to what's happening. And that helps so much. But yeah, in some cases, I feel like in working in generational research, we are tasked with being historians, pop culture understanders, like translators, and futurists at the same time. And it's just this, I personally love it when people are like, why does this one current event have an impact, or why did it come to be? And I'm like, well, let's talk about history and how we got here today, because
Mhm.
like these things don't happen just accidentally when it comes to generations. In some cases, yes, there are some things that we get to like not predict, but like we kind of get to like raise, I wouldn't even say a red flag, but like a yellow flag to say,
Mhm.
hey, we're seeing this thematically pretty deeply in this like element of this cohort. We should keep an eye on it. We should be
Mhm.
thinking about it. And it's not necessarily like a warning sign, because it's really just, hey, we're anticipating based on past behavior how this could unfold again.
Mhm.
And there are some times when we get to say like, I told you so.
Yeah. Yeah. And some of the things that we, sort of put out there as our flags aren't always necessarily warnings. They're just like, hey, just keep an eye on this, just in terms of like, this may be a good thing. You may see, for instance, we knew at a very young age with Gen Zers as through their behavior, and then once we started studying them in their late teens, was their overwhelming commitment to the environment. Well, piggyback that with millennials who are also in that space. It's easy to say that you're going to have two younger generations that are going to be deeply embedded in making financial decisions, supporting businesses that support the environment like that. And so some ways it's not even a red flag or a yellow flag or a flag at all. It's just like, hello, here's some trends you're going to want to look for. So if you're not environmentally on board with your business, just know you may disenfranchise at least one, if not two generations of people who that they really care about. And people will say like, can I, I don't want to believe this, or like, they kind of are dismissive. And I'm like, you can be whatever you want. I am like this neutral party. I'm just simply telling you what is happening and making some suggestions for trends for the future. And it's your job to say, hey, do I want to adapt? Do I want to think about how this might influence my recruitment and retention of employees, or my customer base, my client base, my patients, how I interact with people, whether I start an entrepreneurial endeavor, whether I innovate, invent. I mean, all of these things, you can take it or leave it. And I tell people that, take it or leave it. We're just kind of, telling you about some trends. And so I think it's, that's part of what I really enjoy doing is we don't have to, nor do we take a stance. We just say, it is what it is. Do with it what you will.
Yeah. And I think that's a good place to end, because like my version of that I explain it as like generations are like waves. If you're at the beach and you're standing in the water, you have the ability to stand there and let it crash upon you, and it's uncomfortable and you get knocked over, but it's going to happen. Like the wave is going to happen. Or you get a boogie board or a surfboard and you have a nice time and you ride the wave and you enjoy it and you take that momentum with you. And so it's really the choice of seeing it differently, like the same circumstance, because you're absolutely right. We're just saying what is occurring based on numbers, research, words, lived experiences of generations. And workplaces are, I think, really right now being pushed in that mindset around, do we enjoy the wave and ride the wave, or do we stand there and let it crash on us and experience the consequence of that? So, Corey, thank you for being here. It's always so fun to talk. I'll let you do kind of the promo so you can brag a little bit more. I know how much you love that. Where can people find our book? Where should they be looking to get their hands on this hot resource?
Yes, well, we're actually encouraging folks to go right through our publisher's website, which is Routledge. And I'm sure Meghan will be providing some detailed information, but we do have a coupon code. And so it is actually a lot less expensive to get it through our publisher's site than it is to get it in any other online retailer. And so definitely grab yourself a copy. We have a paperback. There's a hardcover edition. We're sort of veering folks towards the less expensive paperback version. Grab yourself a copy of it. The coupon is good for a little while. There is an expiration on it, so definitely jump on, get that as soon as you can. But I'm sure that Meghan will provide all the details for you in the show notes or in the subsequent documents.
Absolutely. I will certainly be providing the coupon code or the discount code, and I'll put the link to the book in our show notes and the episode notes. So if you were trying to read a little bit about that, we will direct you that way. But Corey, thank you so much for joining me. I know it does feel like we're just recording our Zoom calls, but I really have fun on our Zoom calls. So
we always have really good conversations and lots of good insight. So
yeah, it's true. We normally we have 20 minutes of life catch up time, but we kept that off air today. So
exactly. And usually we talk about, there's a cat coming through and there's other things happening, which we could certainly talk about on the podcast. But
I mean, yes. If anyone that's listening has ever taken a meeting with me, they know Waffles. Waffles was here during this call. She's critical to the production of this podcast. So
exactly.
We get it. All right, Corey. Well, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Hey everybody, Tim Sackett, host of HR Famous, a new podcast on the Work Defined Network. Am I famous? No, I'm HR famous. My wife says I'm a micro celebrity and 13 HR ladies around the world want their picture with me, which I think is funny. So, hey, what do we talk about on the pod? We talk about all the dumb stuff we do in HR in any given day, week, month, and we have fun with it, and we have some great guests. Come check us out. We're not famous. We're HR famous.
Another thank you to Corey for joining us to kick off this season of Gen Z. It's always great to be able to spend time with Corey and reflect on our work together. Our new book, Generations in the World of Work, feels like a culmination of so much of what we've done together over the last 10 years. Generations in the World of Work was written to provide a more holistic understanding of generational dynamics in the workplace. Initially, we were drawn to the topic because of a publishing opportunity, but it evolved into exploring how different generations interact, moving beyond just Gen Z to highlight the importance of cross-generational collaboration and the role it plays in the world of work. We're so proud of the way this book stands out by blending our original research with broader studies, while also offering practical strategies rather than just data or assumptions. This book isn't just another moment in time snapshot. It provides a foundation for understanding how generational traits shape our responses to change. And it's something that workplace leaders, managers, and individual contributors can all benefit from in the strategies outlined, helping them navigate intergenerational relationships at work more effectively. You can get a copy of Generations in the World of Work on Amazon, but you can also save 20% with our publisher, Routledge, using the code 25AFLY1. I'll be sure to put that in the episode notes so that you can grab that. And as always, thank you for tuning in. I really did miss y'all, and I'm glad we're getting back into our groove of hanging out. If this conversation resonated with you, please be sure to share it with a friend so we can keep the conversation going. Rating and reviewing wherever you listen to the podcast also helps other people find Gen Z and learn along with us. The fun of season 7 is just getting started, and there are so many great conversations on the way. Have had so much fun connecting with our guests so far, but subscribing is the best way to make sure you don't miss any of these new episodes when they become available. If you have a guest you'd like me to connect with or a topic that you think we really need to explore, I'm always open to learning more. There's a form on my website where you can share your thoughts. You can find that information at meganmgrace.com/podcast. But we can also stay connected on Instagram and LinkedIn, where you can find me under the handle at meganmgrace. This episode was edited by Leah Kramer, the Gen Zer behind the scenes who brings this podcast to life. Thank you again for stopping by. Let's continue this conversation, and we'll chat soon.